John Wesley Hardin occupies a unique and enduring place in the annals of American folklore and the Wild West. Born on May 26, 1853, in Bonham, Texas, Hardin would become one of the most infamous gunmen of his time, leaving a trail of violence and intrigue across the frontier. His life, marked by rapid ascents and precipitous falls, offers a lens through which to explore the tumultuous era of the late 19th century in America, a time of lawlessness, rapid expansion, and conflicting visions of justice. Early life and influences. John Wesley Hardin was born to James Gibson Hardin and Mary Elizabeth Dixon in a tumultuous period of American history. The Texas he was born into was still a relatively young state, having joined the United States in 1845. It was a frontier state, characterized by its rugged landscapes, booming cattle industry, and a mix of cultures that included Native American tribes, Mexican Americans, and settlers from the eastern United States. From an early age, Hardin exhibited signs of a restless and defiant spirit. He grew up in a family that was itself part of the frontier ethos, where survival often meant being able to defend oneself. Hardin's father, James, was a Methodist preacher who, despite his religious calling, was known to be a stern and uncompromising figure. Some accounts suggest that James Hardin was not averse to violence when he felt it necessary to protect his family or uphold what he saw as justice. It was in this environment that young John Wesley Hardin came of age, a time when disputes were often settled with firearms rather than words, and where the line between lawman and outlaw was often blurred. From an early age, Hardin was exposed to the realities of frontier life, where confrontations were common, and survival often depended on one's ability to handle the path to notoriety. Hardin's reputation as a gunman began early in his life. At the age of 15, he committed his first murder, an act that would set the tone for much of his future. The victim, Charles Cougar, was a former slave and member of the Union Army who had reportedly bullied Hardin. In retaliation, Hardin shot Cougar dead. This incident marked the beginning of Hardin's reputation as a dangerous and lethal individual. In the years that followed, Hardin's life became increasingly intertwined with violence and crime. He was involved in numerous shootings and confrontations, often over matters of honor or perceived insults. Hardin's quick temper and willingness to resort to violence made him a feared figure throughout Texas and beyond. His exploits became legendary, with stories of his marksmanship and daring spread far and wide. One of the defining aspects of Hardin's life was his ability to evade capture. Despite being pursued by lawmen and bounty hunters, Hardin managed to evade capture for many years, often moving from place to place to avoid detection. This ability to escape justice only added to his mystique and contributed to the legend that grew around him. The myth and the man. As Hardin's notoriety grew, so too did the mythology surrounding him. Tales of his exploits were often embellished, with Hardin himself contributing to the myth-making process through interviews and writings. He became a symbol of the rugged individualism and lawlessness that characterized the American West during this period. Hardin's reputation as a gunman was bolstered by his association with other infamous figures of the time, including Wild Bill Hickok and John Selman. These associations further cemented his place in the lore of the Old West, where gunfighters were often viewed as both outlaws and folk heroes. However, behind the mythologized figure of John Wesley Hardin lay a complex and troubled individual. He was not simply a cold-blooded killer, but also a man who struggled with personal demons and contradictions. Hardin was known to be well-read and articulate, with a keen interest in law and politics. He studied law while in prison and wrote extensively about his life and experiences. Captured and imprisoned, Hardin's life of crime eventually caught up with him. In 1877, after years on the run, he was captured by Texas Rangers in Florida and extradited back to Texas to stand trial for murder. He was convicted and sentenced to serve time in Huntsville State Penitentiary, where he would spend the next 17 years of his life. Prison was a transformative experience for Hardin. During his time behind bars, he immersed himself in studying law and philosophy, and he became a devout Christian. He corresponded with prominent intellectuals of the time and wrote a highly embellished autobiography, which further added to his legend. Release and final years. In 1894, Hardin was released from prison on parole. He moved to El Paso, Texas, where he attempted to live a more law-abiding life. He married for the third time and had several children, and he worked as a lawyer, although his reputation as a gunman continued to precede him. Despite his efforts to reform, Hardin's past caught up with him. On August 19, 1895, he was shot and killed in a saloon in El Paso by John Selman, a lawman with whom Hardin had a long-standing feud. Hardin's death marked the end of an era of lawlessness and violence that characterized much of the American West during the late 19th century. Legacy and historical interpretation. John Wesley Hardin's life and legacy have been the subject of much debate among historians and scholars. Some view him as a cold-blooded killer whose actions contributed to the lawlessness of the Old West. Others see him as a product of his time, a man who lived by the violent code of honor that characterized the frontier. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in understanding Hardin within the context of the social, economic, and political forces that shaped the American West. His life serves as a reminder of the complexities of frontier life, where justice was often arbitrary and violence was a fact of daily existence. Hardin's legacy also endures in popular culture, where he continues to be depicted in books, movies, and television shows. His name remains synonymous with the Wild West and the mythic figure of the gunslinger, a figure who embodies both the romance and the brutality of America's frontier past. John Wesley Hardin's life was a microcosm of the tumultuous era in which he lived. He was a product of his time, a time of rapid expansion, cultural conflict, and the struggle for survival in a harsh and unforgiving landscape. Hardin's story is a reminder of the complexities of history and the ways in which individuals shape and are shaped by their circumstances. His life and legacy continue to fascinate and intrigue, offering insights into the myths and realities of the American West. Whether viewed as a villain or a victim of his time, John Wesley Hardin remains a compelling figure whose story sheds light on the darker corners of American history and the enduring allure of the